she was ill, she would throw things at you. Sesame buns, the editorial page, handful of hair ribbons. Do not, she would say, suggest things to suggestible people. Anyway, I brought her the marbles, and she counted 90 of them out and put them in this old cut glass bowl, which had been the sum total of Great Aunt Helena's estate. Apparently the doctor had given her 3 months, and she set great store by doctors. But she said she always believed them because they were the closest thing to the Old Testament we had. I wouldn't give you 2 bits for these young, smiley guys, she'd say. I go for a good, stern-furrowed physician. She wouldn't even have her teeth cleaned by a dentist under 50. So she counted out 90 clear glass marbles and set them in the bowl on her bedside table. Then she went out and spent $1,200 on nightgowns. She said, in my family, you're only dying when you take to your bed. And that, my darlings, is where I'm going. And she did. Oh, we hashed it around. Dad said she couldn't possibly be dying, but the doctors convinced him. I told her it seemed a little medieval to lie in state up there, but she said she didn't want to be distracted from what she loved, us, and what she wanted to mull. And there was nothing outside except drugstores and supermarkets and dry cleaners, and that given her situation, they were beneath her dignity. I asked her what she intended to do up there. She said, study French, visit with us, generally mull, and maybe call a few pals. Study French. She said she'd made a pledge to herself years ago that she would die bilingual. Dad and I cried a lot, but she didn't. He was fun to cry with. From then on, the doctors had to come see her because, as she put it, she came in with a house call and she was going out with a house call. And all day, every day, she would hold one of these marbles in her hand. Why? She said it made the day longer. Mother had her own bedroom. That was the way it was for as long as I can remember. She called my father the Thrasher. Dad could really get into a nightmare. Apparently early on in their marriage, he had flipped over and broken her nose, and that was it. Separate beds. Her room was very spare, really. Wooden floors, an old steel and brass bed, oak dresser, bedside table, and don't ask me why, but a hat rack. No pictures on the walls. She never understood how people could look at the same darn thing day after day. She said it was bound to deflate the imagination. We'd sit with her after dinner and talk about issues. She said she was too far gone for gossip or what we ate for lunch. Then we'd all tuck in, and after a while, just as I was about to drift off, I would hear this. Happened every night. After the 3rd or 4th night, I saw one lying on the ground, and I bent to pick it up, and she said, "Leave it." She said it very sharply. I asked, "How come?" She said she was learning to let go of them. She passed the time. There were things she wanted. She made out a list of children's books from her own childhood, and we got as many as we could find from the library. She said they were still the only good books she'd ever read. She wrote notes to, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70 people, and they told us later on that they were sort of little formal goodbyes, each of them recalling some little incident or shared something. Nothing very significant, but the odd thing was that in each one she included a recipe. A recipe in every one of them. We got out the cookie tin full of old snapshots that somehow never made it into the scrapbook. She liked that. She showed my father how to do the medical insurance and how she handled the accounts. We went through her jewelry. She wrote down the names of the roofers and plumbers and air conditioners. She called it wrapping it up. "Well, this is good," she'd say. "I'm wrapping it up." She had the television moved up into her room, and she called me aside to say that it was entirely possible that she might reach a point where she wouldn't know what she was watching, but that I must promise her I'd keep it on PBS. Later on, when it started getting hard, she told my dad and me that she wanted to spend more time alone. "I'm afraid," she said, "that I'm going to have to do this more or less by myself." She said she was glad, and she hoped we would be, that this sort of thing was arranged so that you got less attached to the people you loved at the end. Do you know, from the very beginning to the very last, she never admitted any pain? Never. She called it the chills. The very last thing she asked for was the picture in our front entrance hall of the Labrador retriever she and Dad had owned from when they were first married. He was, she said, a perfectly dreadful dog. When you're young, she said, you believe in the perfectibility of dogs. I was in bed 2 weeks ago, Wednesday, toward dawn. Then this. Dad and I ran in there. The bedside table had turned over, and she was gone. Dead. When the emergency medical people got there, they found this. The rest had spilled when the table fell, but she kept this in her hand. I keep it. I keep it in my hand all day. It makes the day longer.